Good to be back.
It's good to have you back.
It is good to be back. All right. Convention was good. There was the stuff people thought was going to be controversial wasn't that controversial. There was some arguments over things people weren't necessarily expecting. It's interesting because in many ways, even at the district level, the votes decided before there's ever the debate on the floor. So when people are like debating on the floor, which they're not supposed to debate one another, they're supposed to give their opinion, right? It's just more of like, I want my opinion on the record. You're rarely ever swaying votes. Although there was two gentlemen, one who was speaking on pastoral formation, and he probably did sway a few votes. And then there was another, he was speaking on the S&P, and he said some things he probably shouldn't have said, and probably swayed a good 10% of the voters by doing that.
What's the initials?
S&P?
Specific ministry pastor.
Oh, okay.
So specific ministry pastors are pastors that, so this, that was conceived of for, in particular, churches whether that are too small to afford a pastor, but they have somebody within the congregation that shows the ability and the requirements to be a pastor. It's a primarily online program. There's some intensives that they go to either Fort Wayne or St. Louis for. And so it's a 4-year program. At the end of 2 years, they get ordained, and then they continue on with that program. Adam, blanking on his last name, at Faith, he's an S&P pastor. It's called specific ministry because they are not allowed to take a call anywhere else, and they're always under the supervision of a general pastor. Somebody like me that went through a residential program. They roughly get about 36 to 39% of the education that I went through in the residential program, which is one of the reasons why they're not allowed to just take a call somewhere else or to not be under the supervision of a pastor. Now, those who go through S&P, they have the option to continue on for 3 more years to become, I forget the exact name of it, but they would basically be a general pastor. They would be able to take calls to another congregation, and they would receive the same amount of education as somebody in our residential alternate route program. Residential alternate route, you have to be above a certain age, have been involved in your church and leadership for at least 15 years, and again, show the qualifications of a pastor. You have to be able to pass Greek. Right, so they don't have to do Hebrew, and they get to do all the Old Testament in English, but they have to do Greek in New Testament classes in Greek.
Greek.
What?
That's the showstopper right there.
Yeah. So there's been lots of debate around the program because the LCMS has since its inception been in a pastoral shortage. We have more churches than pastors. We have more churches that can support a full-time pastor than we have pastors. And so the idea behind SMP was, you got a guy, maybe they live inner city, he owns a restaurant or something like that. He can't just pick up and leave. Or they're out in the country, he's a farmer, he's a rancher, he's not gonna sell all his land, all his livestock, and leave. So how can we train him for that congregation to be the pastor? So they have word and sacrament ministry. It has been abused by some congregations. There's some very large congregations that have like 1 or 2 like general pastors, and then like 5 SMP guys. And at that point, it's like, send them to residential. Yes, you have to move, right? I moved to St. Louis, California, St. Louis, Michigan. I had to move 4 times in 5 years, 4 or 5 years. That's part of the residential program. It is a sacrifice. So is also having 9 years of college education. And I'm not paid the same as a doctor who has 9 years of college education. Nothing against you guys, and I'm not saying pay me like a doctor. That's part of being a pastor. There are certain sacrifices expected. So it's been argued about. They recently recommended that SMP you have to be 40 years or older to enter into because of the abuses of it. And that caused some controversy on it. There are unfortunately some pastors who take a very dim view to SMP, and they're very crass in their language. This gentleman that stood up said, you want to go to a mechanic who's watched a few YouTube videos, and you can just feel the room change. And it was just like, you might have just lost the vote right there. And he almost did. It was like 55 to 45. It was one of the closer votes in the pastoral formation resolutions. There's also been this push because residential seminary education is expensive. I graduated with just about $50,000 in student loan debt just to go to St. Louis. I didn't have any debt graduating undergrad. That's just how expensive it is. And even though they now cover tuition fully, you still have to pay for housing and fees in the residential program, which is still expensive. Still thousands of dollars a semester. So with online education now, there's this push to move Masters of Divinity to online education. And there are pros and cons for that. The Synod in Convention rejected online education for its pastors because being a pastor, when you go to seminary, it's not just about learning, it's also about formation. Do you exhibit the qualities, or can you be formed into those qualities, your rough edges knocked off, to fit the pastoral requirements? There are guys who are really, really smart and they pass all the classes and they do not become pastors all the time because they can't deal with disagreement or they have a quick temper. And so they get sat down and they say, you should take a break for a few years and try this program again and see if you do exhibit the temperament to be a pastor, things like that. You would not see that in online education. And you want to have that same formation in online education. The other thing that residential does is that you experience a very broad section of the LCMS. Whereas if you were just to do online education, all you would know is your congregation. And that's it. So it was... But there has been an attempt by people within the LCMS to start online MDiv programs, Masters of Divinity programs. And get the seal of approval of the LCMS on those programs, and that was denied. So those two issues were very contentious. That floor committee, they had a bouncer at the open meetings. Like, you had to put your name, you had to get your name on a list to speak, because it was packed, and there was a variety of opinions that people had on the resolutions that basically affirmed our residential seminary programs and affirmed how we train our SMP pastors and encourage them to move on. One of my favorite comments, I don't want to, I'm not using names, I can't remember this lady's name. She stood up and she said, so you want SMP to go on for another 3 years, and so that's 7 years of school. That's a long time. And so I'm advisory delegate, I have voice but no vote, so I stood up and said, 7 years is a long time. To go through the residential program is 8 years, because you have to have a bachelor's.
Oh my God.
So it's like, I spent 8 years in school. The SMP does not require anybody to have a bachelor's degree, right? Because they're not giving out a master's degree. They're not giving out a bachelor's degree at the end of it. So it's just kind of like, they could have a PhD before they start the SMP program, right? But to sit there and say, well, 7 years is too long for education, well, and not only that, I'm one of those dumb guys that couldn't figure out what to do in college. So I had 30 hours in undergrad. So I went to undergrad for 5 years because I couldn't pick a major, right? I took Chem 2 for the fun of it. I loved chemistry. And I could go back and change one thing, it would probably just to get a chemistry degree, I probably would have gotten out in 4 years. But still, so I was like, that's what I said, like, I have 9 years of college level education. That's just, again, one of the things. My floor committee, I'll just kind of give you a rundown here. My floor committee was Floor Committee 4, Life Together. We had a lot of things that we dealt with, but the three that we got the biggest comments on was, so we have in the LCMS, we have what's known as recognized service organizations. These are organizations who are not a part of the LCMS, but they further our mission in some sort of area. There's 3 categories of them. There's witness, there's mercy, and I think education is the third. And they have different requirements depending on what they do. So like the mercy work ones in particular do not require 100% LCMS boards, whereas the witnessing ones do. And the reason that is historically we started these RSOs in like the 80s and 90s, and we started them, in a lot of ways, people started them with other church bodies. We have a lot with the ELCA. And when I say mercy ones, we're talking, in particular, for most of these, they're foster adoption agencies. So we operate, I shouldn't say we operate, the largest or second largest foster adoption agency in Michigan is one of these RSOs, right? And that tends to be like, it either tends to be us or the Catholics in that sphere that operates the largest one in the state. And they usually only operate in the state because every state has different legal requirements. And so it's really hard to operate across state lines. Some of these RSOs in particular, like there's some up in Washington or New York, have engaged in pride parades, things like that, against our teaching. Where others have not, but the state has come in and said, what's in the best interest of the child is you place this foster child at the closest familiar relationship. Doesn't matter what sort of union that might be, right? So in those cases where they are willfully participating and promoting things against the scripture, we are going through the process of dropping RSO status. There is a lot of times a lot of legalities involved in that, so it is a process. You can't just drop them overnight, but you have to disencumber, because sometimes the districts own them or they're partners with them. So there's just a bunch of legal paperwork that takes time. Whereas like the other ones where the state has come in and says you're going to have to do this, what we would like is, because we've seen this with the Catholic ones, where they've sued the state and they've actually won on religious freedom grounds. And we're saying, hey, don't just flip over to the state, but take a lawsuit, right? Now, that's not going to stop the immediate placement, because lawsuits take time, and this will work, more than likely will work its way up to at least the state Supreme Court level, if not the United States Supreme Court level. But do that so the LCMS can join that lawsuit and help. People have various opinions on this. Some people sit there and say, we shouldn't do anything, we shouldn't drop anybody. And other people are like, the moment they do something, we should drop it outright. And it's like, well, you can't go to court for somebody if they're no longer, like, you have an interest in them whatsoever. So we got a lot of comments on those. And so we try to really thread that needle of saying, those organizations that are intentionally doing things, we're working on dropping the status, and those that are trying to remain faithful, take it to court and allow us to come alongside you. One of the other ones was, believe it or not, reconstituting the Commission on Worship. So how we get hymnals in the LCMS is we have this thing called the Commission on Worship. They produced this. This was published in 2006, right? The Commission on Worship was sunsetted in 2010. Well, it's about time for a new supplemental. We actually had overtures asking for a new supplemental, one asking for a new hymnal. But we don't have an organization or an organ within the LCMS to do that. So we wanted to reconstitute the Commission on Worship so they could start working on a new supplemental. And there is some debate within the LCMS right now. And that debate is whether women can read the readings or not. Believe it or not, I'm of the opinion they absolutely can. As happens here at Christ. And if the LCMS ever said anything different, we would have to file a dissent and see what happens from there. But there's plenty of instances in Scripture where just the reading of the Word is not to be confused with the proclamation of the Word. Now, historically, in the church, in the Lutheran Church, the Sunday readings, Sunday morning readings were done only by the pastor. But the Sunday evening and the midweek services were done by school children. So, to sit there and, so the Commission on Worship would be the one who also talks about those and gives guidance about those sorts of debates within the LCMS. But what happened is people thought that the Commission on Worship was going to come in and say you can no longer do contemporary worship, you can only do from the hymnal liturgical worship. Which is funny because we cite both the third article in the Synod Constitution and the fourth article in the Synod Constitution. The third article in the Synod Constitution says that while we strive for unity of practice, we recognize that there is a variety, and part of the Synod is to appreciate the variety in practices. The fourth article says that one of the conditions of membership is using doctrinally pure hymnals and agendas, right? So in other words, we don't go out and buy Baptist Hymnal 1991 and use that for our liturgy, right? That's what that clause means. But people saw that one clause that we cite, we're citing the relevant things in the whereases and in the resolves, and they were freaking out. And so we got accused of a lot of things we weren't trying to do. And it's just like, just please read it. Read it. Ask a question. That was probably the most disappointing thing, was that I saw a lot of comments online. And then I went and looked just to double check, and that person didn't take, they spent the 10 minutes writing a Facebook post, but they didn't take the 5 minutes to write an email to our floor committee. And I was just like, that says a lot to me. And then we also had a resolution. So we had, there was 3 overtures sent to the convention and given to our floor committee that wanted to call Charlie Kirk a martyr, and create a day on the church calendar in his honor. So those overtures, every overture gets published in the convention workbook. Once that was published, then people sent in the comments to the floor committees. We got 3-to-1 comments against mentioning Charlie Kirk specifically. So we wrote a resolution, including the Synod president, because Charlie Kirk was not just a Christian, but he was very much involved in politics. He was a political commentator, and so therefore somewhat controversial. I got to be honest, I never knew of the guy outside of his name until after he was killed. I think I watched maybe 2 video clips before he was killed. Just was not familiar with him. So we crafted an overture condemning political violence, but we didn't name him specifically because the evidence is not out on the reason why he was killed. The preliminary evidence trial, which was happening during convention, shows that his murderer killed him because he opposed transsexuality, and the murderer was, or I guess accused murderer, was dating a trans person. Now, again, his faith informed his politics. The other thing with martyrs is martyrs are usually killed by governments, not individuals. So there was some pretty semi-famous people within the LCMS that called our floor committee cowards for not naming him. By the way, I didn't tell you all this in the month leading up to convention, but it was interesting to read that. Again, one of those people that caterwauled online, but never once wrote a single comment to the committee, which says a lot to me if you are to be a Christian brother, in particular a pastor, and accuse somebody of being a coward, but you're not brave enough to hit send on an email.
Right. A coward for not wanting
To name
include him?
Yes, to not name Charlie Kirk specifically. We were cowards. So that resolution, so then we got some comments on that resolution. Again, they're about half and half about naming Charlie Kirk, not naming Charlie Kirk. We heard from people that dealt with college, in particular college-age kids. That tend to be the argument. He influenced college-age kids. They were on both sides. Again, about half and half. So we decided as a committee to not change that. It went to the convention floor. There was an amendment, a proposed amendment to putting Charlie Kirk in there. It failed 54 to 45%. So it was not amended. And then that resolution passed. And then that same guy that just accused our floor committee of being cowards accused all of convention of being cowards. Now, on the last day of convention, there was a delegate resolution. So every delegate can submit a resolution if they want, dealing with Christian martyrdom, of which they said, I think one of the whereases was, it is suspected that Charlie Kirk was killed because of the faith. Somebody made a move to amend that to remove those lines. That failed, so that resolution passed 90% to 90 point something percent to 8 point something percent. So he got named in the end, but it was just, yeah. We knew there would be controversy. The job of the floor committees is not to divide Synod, but to take sometimes competing overtures and in their wisdom craft a resolution that fits with our theology and our practice of that theology that they think will get approved. Because overture is submitted because somebody thinks it's important. Another thing that caused great debate was Floor Committee 9. Floor Committee 9 on, there was a circuit, I think out in California, and then a church in Indiana. Those might be reversed. That wanted to move the election of synodical president back to convention. So, for those who can remember 2010, now I was in seminary in 2010. I was still learning about the LCMS in 2010 in a lot of ways. But 2010, there was a lot of changes done to the structure of Synod, and one of those things was that starting with the 2013 election of president, it would be through every congregation would be able to register an ordained voter and a lay voter. So in theory, you have something like 8,000 to 9,000 potential voters. Instead of it just being a convention where you have anywhere, this last convention we had just under 1,000 delegates, voting delegates there. So what that floor committee had done was they had crafted 915, Resolution 915, which was to basically educate people about the registration process and the voting process as congregations, starting at like district conventions, things like that. Well, Sunday's Today Business comes out, and so first you get a book of Today's Business, which is this thing that has all the resolutions, and then if you amend anything, it has to be printed. And so there's a Today's Business for every day. And so the joke was today's business, yesterday's today's business, right? And Sunday's Today's Business, they had basically they put out Resolution 918, which would have moved the voting back to convention. Whether you're for that or not, I personally thought it was unwise to make such a monumental change and only give people 4 days or 5 days to consider it before they vote. So that caused a lot of debate. Somebody stood up and moved that they substitute 918 for 915. That passed, and 915 ultimately passed. So all the congregations still get their vote in Synod. The argument is like only 50% of congregations were actually voting, but of that 50% that registered, the voting was still like something like 90% of registered people were voting in the election. And 5,000 people is still a lot more than under 1,000. So that was some of the controversies that were going on. Otherwise, it was fairly uncontroversial. Usually what happens at convention is the first couple of days, the convention will have a lot of patience for people wanting to amend things, adding a word here, taking a word out there. And then by day 3, when those same people start getting up to the microphones again, everybody's just ready to start hitting no. And there might be 2 or 3 people that speak before somebody that's calling the question, right? Move to call the question. And so very few amendments actually passed overall. There were a few that passed amendments from the floor. So it was a good convention. I got like a buddy of mine when my floor committee was up on the stage, the platform, whatever you want to call it. The guy right next to me, he was saying something in my ear, and I look like the Godfather, right? Looks like he's telling me like somebody just got eliminated or whatever. He sent me that picture. It's not my profile picture. If you want to see it. That was funny. And he also sent me another picture. So the lights are blinding that they show on you. So I'm listening to I don't know whoever speak on my floor committee. And there's nothing that I didn't disagree with that anybody in my floor committee said to the floor. But because I'm like squinting from the lights, it makes me look at like I'm saying like, what in the world are you saying? This is what my facial expression looks like. And it's just like the lights are bright, and they are just at an angle, and they had it at like the worst possible angle because you're reading from this white lectern thing, and how the lip of it is and the angle of the lights is everything you are reading is in shadow. I was like, who designed this? And there wasn't a light on there to turn on or anything. So it was kind of
Should have went up there and went.
Yeah, like there was one of them where basically the guy was just like shining his phone light on the thing so the guy could read. It was just like, yeah. But it was good for the most part. And then you have So you do your business. It starts at 8. You have an hour and a half for lunch, and then it ends at 6. Right? That's kind of the day. And so you do the business. There's worship every single day. There was matins every morning, then a midday service, and then a closing service every day, kind of thing. I joked with the LCMS chaplain because he's the one that kind of designed the worship service. I was just pulling his leg because he's kind of a high church guy, and there was chanting in every service. It was fine because they did it well. But I joked, like, I've only heard great things about the worship service. Even though we've had screens, at least one guitar solo, women cantors, which some people flip out about, I don't, again. We did not have a hymnal, just printed bulletins, again, something people freak out about. And then a lot of the introit settings or the psalm settings were not from the hymnal at all. So we had non-hymnal settings as well. Didn't hear a single complaint. Yet people complain about those in churches all the time. So I was just like, hey, look, you can worship with screens and a guitar, and it's okay. Wow, the world didn't turn on fire. We weren't struck by lightning. Go figure.
Did y'all have speakers?
Yes, we had speakers.
Like missionary speakers, or?
Yes, we did. And in fact, that's why the president of the LWML was there. She spoke. The head of Lutheran Hour Ministries spoke. There was, every day, there was about a 15-minute paper that was given within a 10-minute response to that paper, not in conflict with that paper, but the paper was said maybe at an academic level right up here, and the response's job was so everybody could understand what was just said, right? It was very, very well done. And then, of course, all the elections, which is just the mind-numbingest, boring part, because it's just a name, right? You can read these names, this position, these names, please vote now. And 25 seconds later, you find out if you have another election or not. I was asked to have my name for Commission on Worship. So actually knew one of the people that was taking nominations, and he goes, hey, do you want to be nominated for anything? I was like, well, Commission on Worship would be great. I had 53 fools vote for me. So just over 6% of that vote, but that was an honor to even, that there was more than one person to vote for me. So, and basically it's because I'm a middle of the road guy, right? And so they wanted to make sure that there's a voice on that committee, that commission, that can speak and say, hey guys, you're going off over here on this extreme, or you're going off here on that extreme, and we need something for 90% of Synod here, kind of thing, on that. So it was good. And then of an evening, there are social activities. So the seminary has held a joint reunion, right? So you see a lot of guys, or some of the guys that you graduate with. Because we are involved in the church plant in Piedmont, I was invited to the National Mission Banquet, which was invite only. I actually got a very special pin that is, you can't buy the pin. It is just given out. So there's not a lot of people with that pin. I felt really, really cool. Yeah, I know, yeah, I just wanted to. So there's a lot of good stuff that happens there as well, and so it's not just all work, but it is a lot of work, of course. The district, Oklahoma district, we were very blessed. The Oklahoma district bought breakfast for us. Basically, they went at the hotel that we're at, so we had a room that we go and eat breakfast every day, because all the meals are pretty much on your own. So that was nice, and you could talk about what was coming up, or answer any questions, anything like that. Oklahoma and Wyoming were the only two districts that sent youth representatives. So every district has the opportunity to send 2 youth representatives. So it's us in Wyoming. So there's actually an article in the reporter over that. We get top billing. One of our youth delegates is the very first word you'll see. They're quoting her. So that was kind of really cool to be able to be a part of that, to highlight that, and to let them know. You know, they got to see something that not a lot of people get to see. So a lot of business. So the voting, and then the other really boring part is any of the bylaw changes, which just has to happen. It's just, I mean, if you enjoy reading bylaws, it's riveting. If you don't enjoy reading bylaws, it's just like, okay, sure.
Water on my eyes.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. But again, as a voting person, as an advisory, I just had to kind of be aware of the issues and have opinions on things that I had opinions on, but I didn't have to have an opinion on everything because I wasn't voting, and I didn't have to read any of the biographies. So I got to skip out on a third of the required reading, which is nice because as a lay delegate, or excuse me, as a floor representative, on a floor committee, I had to read every report, and I had to read at least every overture and comment for my committee. I mean, I read all the overtures just so I could, if I had any, I could comment to the other floor committees, but it's a lot of reading. I mean, that workbook's over 400 pages. So, any questions? We're gonna survive as a church body. Yep.
How often do they do this?
Every 3 years. There's usually an overture to move it to 2 years or 4 years. They used to be every 2 years. They moved it every 3 years. The reason why they don't do 4 years is because what I've been told is it would be too much work to get done and you have to extend it. I mean, it costs a couple $1 million to hold this. This is why we're in Phoenix. Because guess who wants to travel to Phoenix in July? A whole bunch of Midwest Lutherans, of course, right? Nobody. That's why it was cheaper.
How many were in attendance complete?
Total attendance was around 1,500. So that's advisory representatives, exhibitors, people helping run it, all that kind of stuff. So, one thing really cool is that, so the Oklahoma district the past few months has been much more aggressive in social media. And so when I was there was a couple of districts that reached out wanting to, so we're trying to set up a Zoom, and we're going to invite all the districts, but to have kind of a collaborative social media strategy just overall. And so it's not just a district here doing this and a district there doing that, but we might be able to multiply on each other's efforts. So that was really cool to see and be a part of those introductory conversations for that. Did anybody watch any of the live streams?
Laura's wanted to see that here.
Okay. Yeah.
I watched some.
Yeah.
Not a lot.
No, it's fine. And they are on the LCMS's YouTube. If you want to go back, and they're each, a few hours long. And again, there's some boring stuff that happens in there.
If there was a brave warrior willing to go through and timestamp, then it would be fantastic. But the problem with live streams of any type of convention is you end up watching an hour of just nothing, of just moving between things or people walking up to go to the microphone. So trying to watch it is difficult.
Yeah. Yes. Very much.
In our convention, and it was awful because I was a YWR, so I was at the front, and because the tables really close together, so I had to pee really bad, and I couldn't get out, so I had to crawl under the table. Everyone's looking at me like, hey.
Every time there was an issue, I wanted to talk at the mic, so this is just something personal. I was like, okay, I need to go to the restroom, and then that floor committee would come up, and I'd be like, oh.
Because then you're sitting there for another hour.
And then half the time you click into the queue, right? So debate ended at 20 minutes. And so half the time you click into the queue and you stand there the whole 20 minutes, and then it'd be time to vote, or somebody would call the question before you ever got to speak, and you're just like, I could have just gone to the bathroom anyway. But it was good. And it's a service. I enjoy doing it. It is hard, I'll be honest. The hard part is being away from y'all and being away from my family for a week. Heidi and the kids were at Luther Home for the week, and I was like, I'd rather be with you guys. And she's like, I'd rather you be with us too. I was like, fair, you know. But it's stuff that has to get done. I don't know where the next one's gonna be. They didn't announce it, or I missed it if they announced it. I've been lobbying for Oklahoma City ever since they announced Phoenix, and I was like, well, if heat doesn't matter, we got the hotels, we got the convention center, we got the restaurants. Come to Oklahoma, I can sleep in my bed.
We don't have exorbitant rates or anything, do we? Or,
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know. They would be, if they did do Oklahoma, they would be one of the first events happening in the new, whatever. So I don't know if they will.
Build-up and Mail Convention is here next year.
Yes, yes it is. So I'm hoping all those people talk about how great Oklahoma is. So, yeah.
It was really
I saw online where you put out a message about other districts interested in what you do with your messages online.
Yeah, so the district social media. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, and so other districts have seen that. There's a few districts that are active on social media and a few districts that aren't, and so they wanted to talk, and so we're gonna see if we can kind of come up with some sort of cohesive social media strategy. So we're directing people to our churches. That's really kind of the role of district social media in my mind, is to basically kind of, what is a Lutheran? This is how we approach things, and you can find that at your local congregation, right?
Yeah, it looks like you're a trailblazer in that.
That I don't know. So yeah, that was, again, that was one of the good things. And I talked with the interim director of the LCMS Communications Department. He was there, and I said, hey, by the way, we're trying to set up this Zoom. Would you guys want to be a part of that? And he was like, yeah. He asked that it waits until September because the social media person's on maternity leave until then. So fair. Gives us time to track down emails and everything. So.
Pastor,
Yes.
I hope a lot of our members will come to the worship open service with
Yes.
the LWL convention section.
Yep.
That's a great opportunity for all of us to worship together.
Yep.
So,
I hope as many people can go there. What dates?
July 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th.
Okay, 8th and 9th.
July 8th is Thursday, that's when it starts.
It's really cool getting to command 4,000.
And July 8th is a big worship service that night. And that's open to the whole community, that's just not for Lutherans, that's anybody who wants to.
Well, good. I'll be in town then. So,
Is that hotel?
taking vacation in June next year. We're doing like a big 2-week road trip up north, like
It's cool.
Mount Rushmore, things like that. No, just where it's hot, where it's normally cold in the winter, but it's hot in the summer. So yeah,
They're gonna have a golf tournament the day before, I'm gonna help with the golf tournament.
well, good luck with that.
It's gonna be at Lincoln, I mean, it's gonna be hot.
Nothing against our golfers out there, but golf is a good walk ruin, right?
I couldn't believe that they, cause usually it's in June and
Yeah.
July.
It's gonna be hot.
It's gonna be hot.
But you know what? Just like Phoenix, they have air conditioning inside.
Yeah.
I was wearing a sweatshirt.
Yes.
In
And now
that
we have-
building.
Now we have all those hotels down there, cause it's gonna be at the convention center,
Yep.
We have all those hotels down there where,
Yep.
buses come back and forth.
That's
Because
what I
last
tell
time
them.
we-
Yeah.
It's
So-
a lot, it's gonna be a lot better.
That's what I'm saying. They should hold the LCMS convention in 3 years.
They should,
29. So, any other questions? Okay. What'd you guys? How did it go when I wasn't here? Everybody's alive?
Mr. Ray was here.
Okay.
I liked it anyway.
Did he do his own or did he do the hymn one? He did the hymn one?
Some
Okay.
on
I gave him
baptism.
the option. I was like, I printed this off just in case you need it. Because I had not talked about what he wanted to cover for Bible study, so that's good. I noticed the screens were leaving when I left. I got the text that they weren't working. Those parts, I guess, were taken by the techs to figure out what's going on with them and if they're under warranty to replace them, because one just literally got replaced right before I left. So, thank you for being on that, Gary. Yeah. Church is still here. Something got on fire.
And you have a bunch of people that's CPR certified.
Yes! Who went to the CPR class? AED. Okay. Fantastic. I had a wedding yesterday morning, so.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
4.5 hours.
For a wedding?
Good class.
For the CPR.
They were thorough, sounds like.
Yes, very.
Well, that's good, right?
Well, it's a
You're not
regular
breaking
8-hour
ribs, you're not going deep enough.
It's a regular 8-hour class. We condensed it.
Yeah, but we were smart students.
Yeah.
Okay. We finished Acts 16 last time. We got about 10 minutes left of class. All right. We can at least read through Acts 17 if somebody wants to do that.
When Paul and his companions had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a Jewish synagogue. As was his custom, Paul went into the synagogue, and on 3 Sabbath days he reasoned with them from the Scriptures, explaining and proving that the Messiah had to suffer and rise from the dead. This Jesus I am proclaiming to you is the Messiah, he said. Some of the Jews were persecuted and joined Paul and Silas, as did a large number of God-fearing Greeks and quite a few prominent women. But other Jews were jealous, so they rounded up some of the bad characters from the marketplace, formed a mob, and started a riot in the city. They rushed to Jason's house in search of Paul and Silas in order to bring them out to the crowd. But when they did not find them, they dragged Jason and some of the other believers before the city officials, shouting, "These men who have caused trouble all over the world have now come here, and Jason has welcomed them into his house. They are all defying Caesar's decree, saying that there is another king, one called Jesus." When they heard this, the crowd and the city officials were thrown into turmoil, and they made Jason and the others post bond and let them go.
As soon as it was night, the believers sent Paul and Silas away to Berea. On arriving there, they went to the Jewish synagogue. Now the Berean Jews were of more noble character than those of Thessalonica, for they received the message with great eagerness and examined the Scriptures every day to see if what Paul said was true. As a result, many of them believed, as did also a number of prominent Greek women and many Greek men. But when the Jews in Thessalonica learned that Paul was preaching the word of God at Berea, some of them went there too, agitating the crowd and stirring them up. The believers immediately sent Paul to the coast, but Silas and Timothy stayed at Berea. Those who escorted Paul brought him to Athens and then left with instructions for Silas and Timothy to join him as soon as possible.
Now, while Paul was waiting for them at Athens, his spirit was provoked within him as he saw that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the devout persons, and in the marketplace every day were those who happened to be there. Some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers also conversed with him, and some said, "What does this babbler wish to say?" Others said, "He seems to be a preacher of foreign divinities, because he was preaching Jesus and the resurrection." And they took him and brought him to the Areopagus, saying, "May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? For you bring some strange things to our ears. We wish to know, therefore, what these things mean." Now all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there would spend their time in nothing except telling or hearing something new.
So Paul, standing in the midst of the Areopagus, said, "Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God. What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, being the Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God in the hope that they might feel their way toward him and find him. Yet he is actually not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as even some of your own poets have said. For we are indeed his offspring. Being then God's offspring, we ought not to think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image formed by the art and the imagination of man. The times of ignorance God overlooked, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent, because he has fixed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed. And of this he has given assurance to all by raising him from the dead. Now when they heard of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked, but others said, we will hear you again about this. So Paul went out from their midst, but some men joined him and believed, among whom also were Dicenius, the Areopagite, and a woman named Damaris, and others with them.
All right. Thus endeth the lesson for today. We'll dive into Acts 17 next week. There's a lot to unpack there. Start to get a little bit more of Paul's teaching and snippets of his proclamation. So that's where we'll, again, I'm giving you 4 minutes early. So.